Hi everyone, this is Brandon Coppernall from TechWise Academy. Today I'm going to show you how to create a six-sided die and roll it in Scratch. You're going to learn how to create a sprite, you're going to learn how to design custom costumes, and then you're going to write some code to randomly select a costume to create the effect of rolling a die. During the pandemic, we played a lot of board games in our family, and this was the most common die that we used. It was the six-sided die. So this is a really simple shape to design. This is why I chose it for this lesson, and I'm really excited to dive in. So let's get started. Okay, so in this tutorial we are going to use Scratch to simulate rolling a die. It's a six-sided die, as I talked about previously in the preview. Right there it is. In order to do that, though, there's some steps that we have to do. So I have a blank canvas here for you, and we're going to have to create a sprite. We're going to have to create some costumes for that sprite, and then we're going to write our code so that every time we press the green flag, we're going to simulate rolling the die in this case. So I just wanted to show you where this is where we're going to start. Again, it's really helpful if you have one of these handy, and I'm going to get a little close to the camera here. These six-sided dice are really useful because you're going to be able to look at it and you're going to be able to see how to design it. So I'm going to blow up the screen here so you can get a better look at what I'm doing. Please feel free to follow along and or pause as needed as you are doing these steps with me. Okay. What you see here is a blank space. As I shared, it's blown up for you so you can see it a little bit better in this video. I've already deleted the Scratch Cat, so if you started a new project and it's still there, feel free to delete or hide it. But I like to start from blank here because I get to see what I want to create as I'm creating it. So I work better that way. Some others may have different approaches, and that is absolutely fine. But what we have to do is we have to create a sprite, create costumes, then we can do the coding. So we're going to go through the design to create the sprite and drawing the costumes first. To get started, we're going to go down to the corner here to choose a sprite, and we're going to select paint. As you can see, we have nothing painted yet. It's a blank slate here, and the nice thing about Scratch's Costume Creator is it shows you where the center of the sprite will be. So that's what these crosshairs are. They will be entirely useful for us as we figure out what we want, where we want our dice, where we want our circles, anything like that. So first step is we got to create a square, right? The six-sided die looks square. So the first step is to select rectangle. And I'm going to go ahead and make my die white because I want a white die. I'm a traditionalist in that regard. And I'm going to hold the shift key, and using my mouse or my mouse pad, I'm going to click and I'm going to drag. Now I don't want it too big. And then I'm going to select it while it's highlighted and line up the middle with those crosshairs. Now we have a perfect square and it's perfectly centered. You might notice here on the right it is not perfectly centered. That's because in our game we have not positioned it yet, so it's going to show up that way. But as we create additional costumes, if we always center it, we know that as we switch costumes, our die is not going to jump around and be unpredictable for us. So, what does our one-sided die have? It has a circle in the middle, so we're going to need to create a circle. In order to do that, we are going to select Circle in the tools, and I'm going to select a black filler because black is opposite of white. You'll notice a lot of times with die or dice, the numbers on the dice are always in contrast to the color of the dice. So if I got a white die, I'm going to use a black circle. You might also see a lot of times a red die with white circles and so on. So I'm going to use black in this case, and again, I'm going to hold the shift key and I'm going to draw a circle. And while it's highlighted, I'm going to carefully click in there and drop it in the middle. And now I have a perfectly formed square and a perfectly formed circle, completely centered, and we have our first side of the die. Now, we are going to have to create the other 5 sides. So you'll want to look at your die and follow along and do these steps. But before we get to that, I'm going to show you how to duplicate your costumes so you don't have to start from scratch, pun intended, every time that you want to make a new side. So we have the starting point for our sprite. I'm going to right click up here in costume 1 and say duplicate. That drops costume 2 right underneath it. And as you can see, it looks exactly like what we just created. That's important because we don't want to keep doing this over and over again, and we would like our sides to be the same size. We would like our dots to be similar sizes. We don't want some that look really big, some that look really small. It looks kind of weird doing that. So a 2-sided die, and the way I'm holding it, I have 2 dots on it, one in the top left corner and one in the bottom right corner. And here's why I like this exercise, because it's really simple. Select the arrow key and then select the dot in the middle. And the nice thing about this is now I can click and drag this into a new position. That's probably not perfect, but hey, we're just creating these, right? But now, as you can see in costume 2, it looks different from costume 1, so that doesn't affect the first side of the die. So I'm effectively creating the second. Now, I don't want to keep drawing circles because I might make different sizes. So with your circle highlighted, select copy. Then select paste. And a new circle is going to appear nearby. So I'm going to drag this, and I might play with the positioning a little bit. That's the perfectionist in me. And now, as you can see in this screen here in the middle, I have 2 dots for its second side of the die. It's showing up over here on the right because that is what I'm created. It is my active costume. And over here on the left in my second costume, you can see the 2 dots. Now, we're going to create the other 4 sides. I may speed this up, but feel free to pause or follow along, watch along. But it's really important that we're going to get to all 6 sides being created, and then I will show you the next step. So here we go. Okay, as you can see, we have 6 sides to our die now. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And if you've noticed, I have kept the number matching the costume. This is a little hack for you to be able to easily remember what you have going on here. The next step, and this is going to be really important for a later piece of code to streamline our coding and make this a lot easier, we're going to rename our costumes. And so you'll have to do this step several times. I'm going to start from the beginning and select the first costume. And the name of the costume is right here, and it's costume 1. So I double clicked in there and highlighted it, but I'm going to name it 1. Pretty imaginative, right? We wanted to keep them consistent. So now I'm going to name each one by the corresponding number to that side of the die. Now we have 6 sides. All 6 sides are designed, named, and everything is peachy. But our sprite is still called sprite 1. Over here on the right, you can see it says sprite 1. and the sprite name is right here. I clicked inside this box and I said, let's change this. So rather than sprite 1, I'm going to name it dice. The technical term is die, but let's just name it dice for now. So what we have here is a die with 6 sides. All sides are painted and named appropriately. Now, if you would like, you can also click on the X and Y coordinates and change it to 0, and you will notice that the die moves to the middle and now is completely centered on our screen, which just makes it easier to spot, and it's really nice. So guess what? We're ready to start coding. We have our design. So we created our sprite. We created our design. We did some naming, and I'm going to show you why we did that, but it's going to be very useful. And yes, this die is a little bit bigger, so you can actually make them smaller than this. You may have a bigger one. You may have a smaller one. You can also use code to change the general size of the die. So, hey, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're learning here, so we're going to do this well. So we want the die to roll every time we click the green flag, because the green flag signals to Scratch in the game that we are starting. It's the go button. So we're going to click on code up here in the top left, and as you can see, we have the sprite selected, and it shows up here in the top right corner of your workspace. Now, to start the game on the green flag, that is an event. So we need to go to events, when green flag clicked, and let's place it right here in the middle. And I'm going to blow this up just a little bit more so we can see it, but it is right here in the middle. And when rolling the dice in real life, you will see different sides of the dice as they move on the table or board, right? For this tutorial, we're not going to worry about rolling across the screen. We might do that later, but we're going to simulate seeing the different sides of the die. So for visual sake, we are going to have this die roll 7 times. So that way we see 7 random numbers before we finish on a specific number that is selected. So to create these 7 different sides that you're going to see, we're actually going to use a repeat block or a loop. That is found under the control. And what we're going to do is for this repeat 10, I'm going to drag this to the green flag. And we wanted to see it 7 times. I'm going to change that number to 7. Now, in a game, you might use things called variables. We're not going to use them particularly for this, but as we get a little more sophisticated in this game that we're going to create in the long term, or a game that you might create, you might want to use variables to change how much it rolls. You might randomize it. You might want to change some other things. So for this, I'm going to hard code this as a 7, but in a traditional game or program, we might want to use a variable to control that. But what this means is this is going to repeat 7 times. So we will see 7 different sides of the die each time we roll. And again, you can customize this with random numbers or variables, and we'll cover that in another video. Now, computer programs like Scratch are too fast for our eyes to see, so we're actually going to tell Scratch to wait a bit before doing this iteration in these loops, or each step of the loop. That's what iteration means. It's another step in the loop. So we need to slow this down so our eyes can actually see the different sides. Otherwise, Scratch and computers will just go so fast, almost like I just snapped, and I won't know, did it actually work? I might see a random number, but did it do it 7 times? Did it simulate rolling? We don't know. So what we're going to do is add wait 1 second, and we're going to put it inside this repeat block. Okay, and then what we're going to do is I'm going to change it to 0.5 seconds, So it moves a little bit faster. So I click inside here and I'm going to change it to 0.5. So I'm going to give you a second to do that. But this gives us enough time for us to see that our code is looping through and showing different sides of the die. You can play with this number. Of course, if you slow it down, it just takes longer. So if this was 1 second and it repeats 7 times, this loop or this repeat block will take 7 seconds. Because I halved it to 0.5 seconds, this is only going to take 3.5 seconds to finish. So it's nice to know math when you're a computer programmer, but it also, computer programming helps you with your math. If you remember right, though, we named the costumes after the value of the side that we want to show. And here's why. Scratch will make this really easy for us now because we want to loop through and pick a random side. So what we want to do is go to looks, switch costume to, and we're going to drop that in here. Now, as you can see, it says 6. So every time this loops, right now, if I press green, it looks like 6, right? Because that's what we're already on. So we actually can't tell if our code worked right now. So what we want to do is randomize it between 1 and 6 because there are 6 sides to the die. In order to do that, we'll go to operators and pick random 1 through 10 and drop it. As you can see, this is highlighted right here in this box. Now what this currently means is it will go 1 through 10. We don't have a 10-sided die. Those exist for those D&D nerds out there like myself, or other games, honestly. But in this case, we only have a 6-sided die. So what we need to do is this second number, I'm going to double click in here and change it to 6. Now what this code means is when the green flag is clicked, I'm going to repeat this loop 7 times. I'm going to wait a half a second, and then I'm going to switch the costume from 1 to 6. Now, there's 2 ways to debug or test your code. One, I can click right here in the block, and it will run. And as you can see, my number is changing on the die. So we are simulating how this rolls. The other way to test it is clicking the green flag in the top right corner. Now, let's add some finishing touches, okay? So when we start the game with the green flag, it's always going to show or start with the last number we have seen. So in this case, it's a 5. If you really want to make this random, you can also randomize the starting number for your die. So in order to do that, we're really going to do the same thing. We're going to set the costume, and I'm going to give you a chance to guess, but we're also going to do this exact same step, which, by the way, you can duplicate it and save yourself some time. So I didn't want to put that in. I wanted to show you this trick, but it's really the same thing, right? Because we want the random number to start. So every time I click a green flag, it's starting at a random number. It's not always going to show me what it is from the last game. So it's really that simple. So I love that Scratch now lets you duplicate and copy some code and get some things. So that way this goes by a little faster for you and you don't spend your whole time coding completely starting over every time. Now that you know how to roll a die, you can create clones or other sprites to roll more dice. So if I duplicated this, now I have dice 2. Dice 1 and dice 2 have the same code because I duplicated it. I can actually move dice 2. So let's just space it out. And when I hit the green flag, they are both now rolling their own numbers. That's the fun part about Scratch that I really like, because what we can do is we can duplicate and roll a whole bunch of dice. And as you know, not every board game only has one die. Now, can you take this concept and roll other types of dice? A 10-sided die I mentioned earlier, a 12, or a 20? Remix this project. It's going to be available in the description and the links in the comments. But remix this project and show us your work. We'd love to see it. That does it for this video. Please remember to click like and subscribe to our channel for more tutorials like this and how-tos. On YouTube, you can ring that bell to get instant notifications as these come out. We're also going to put it in our Scratch playlist, so it's going to be really easy to follow and find. And you can find our online courses. We have online courses in Scratch at TechWiseAcademy.com. So visit us, find them, and maybe we have something in there that you're going to really enjoy and learn from. But until next time, this is Brandon with TechWise Academy, and now we can roll dice in Scratch. So send me your stuff, and I'm ready to look at it. Thanks.